Hello, hi, how are you? Welcome to International Student Stories, where we share authentic stories from international students studying in the U.S. My name is Simon Hamlin. I'll be your guide on this journey. First of all, I want to thank you for joining us. I know there are an infinite number of ways you can spend your time, so I'm honored that you've chosen to spend your time here. Before we start sharing the student stories, this short introduction episode is meant to give you a little background on how this podcast came about, what we hope to achieve, and who I am, since we'll be sharing some time together. I work at a company called Study in the USA, which was founded in 1977. Study in the USA is an omni-channel marketing company. That's a fancy way of saying we have a number of different ways or channels we utilize to help international students connect with schools in North America. Colleges, universities, English language programs, boarding and secondary schools. We've created a vibrant community of international students and schools that we're very proud of. I mentioned Study in the USA not to pitch the company, but because it's the work we do at Study in the USA that compelled us to start this podcast. We work closely with international students in schools, and we're intimately involved in the international student recruitment industry. We see how easy it is for the general public and the business world to start treating international students like a number, a statistic on paper. International students can get broken down into the revenue they generate for a school, how they help the economy, financial stuff. But we want to hear more about the human element. There are all these stories these students have about their lives, their experiences coming to study in the US, personal stories that rarely get shared with the world. And these are really inspiring stories. And they make us feel a little less alone. They elevate us. They awaken us. We wanted to create a forum for international students to share their unique and wonderful stories. We're open to stories on any and all topics. It could be exploring mental health challenges. It could be how to adjust to life in the US, starting a company or student organization. It's all through the lens of international students. And we hope that this appeals to anyone from around the world who simply wants to hear a good story. Which brings me to my own personal story. I'll say right up front that early in my life, I was a fairly private person. Over the years, I've learned to be more open and vulnerable and revealing. It doesn't always come easy, but I continue to work on it. I recognize that I can't expect my guests to be open and revealing if I'm not willing to do the same. I want to be a partner, not just an observer on this podcast journey. I'd also prefer to stay in the background during these interviews because I want the spotlight to be on the international students. This is about their stories. But I also realize that, for better or worse, when people listen to podcasts, they often want to know a thing or two about the host as well. Naturally, they get curious about the person conducting the interviews. So I'll do my best to share a few things, when appropriate, about myself during the interviews. And right now, I'll give you a quick overview of my story. Okay, here we go. I've got a fairly diverse background in terms of my life and career experiences. Culturally, I'm a Sephardic Jew. My ancestors are originally from Spain, and during the Spanish Inquisition in the 15th century, my ancestors emigrated to Turkey and Greece. Then eventually in the early 20th century, my great-grandparents settled in Seattle, Washington. I also had a great-grandpa who was originally from Lebanon. I was born and raised in Seattle, where I'm blessed to have many relatives and friends, including my parents and my sister, brother-in-law, and nieces and nephew. My parents recently celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary. I've traveled all around the world through Europe, the Middle East, India, Thailand, Istanbul, Copenhagen, throughout Mexico. I've lived for short periods of time in Israel as a counselor at an American high school, Boise, Idaho, Maui in Hawaii, and San Diego, California. I lived in Los Angeles for almost 7 years total, where I went to college at UCLA and then moved back to LA to pursue acting. I was a professional actor for about 10 years and performed in over 50 theater, film, and television projects. I was even fortunate enough to get small roles in 2 Academy Award nominated films. In the business world, I've worked at a music startup, a public relations firm, in digital sales and marketing. During my acting years, I worked in all kinds of odd jobs, including the obligatory restaurant server job. I even hosted speed dating events. In Los Angeles, while trying to scrape together a career in acting, I worked for a family who had a child with autism. Through that experience, I ended up becoming heavily involved in the world of autism. I co-produced a theater and film arts program for children with autism and special needs called The Miracle Project, which became the topic of an HBO documentary called Autism the Musical. I've always been a writer and have a love for storytelling. That's definitely a common theme throughout my life. In all my travels, I've been fascinated by the stories of those regions and the people of those regions. And on my work, I've been interested in finding the stories. Some of my other interests, in no particular order, I try to learn and incorporate a lot of health and wellness practices in my life: meditation, yoga, physical fitness like boxing, surfing, hiking, interval training. I've had to work through bouts of depression at different points in my life, and that certainly plays a role in why I've adopted these health and wellness practices. I've done silent meditation retreats. I got a yoga teacher certification. I've taken classes in composting, recycling, and gardening. I've worked with kids in a variety of capacities, things like reading books to classrooms and volunteering at the Seattle Children's Hospital. The most important kids in my life are my 2 nieces and 1 nephew. They bring me so much joy. All right, so you can probably see by now that I have a lot of interests, probably too many. And sometimes I get overwhelmed with all the things I want to do and explore. And that's the beauty of this podcast and why I'm excited about it. We get to cover all types of topics and hear all types of stories. I get to jump into these new worlds for short periods of time, and you get to join me. When COVID first hit, I was in Thailand at a yoga teacher training retreat. I was in a group of 18 students from 14 different countries. I decided to interview my classmates and publish those interviews on a website I created. That was one of the highlights of the yoga retreat for me. Each person I interviewed revealed something that totally surprised me, delighted me, and made me think about something in a different way. When I look back on it now, those very informal interviews I did with fellow yogis turned out to be a precursor to this International Student Stories podcast. It reminded me how much I love interviewing people. I walk away from every interview I do having learned something new. Before I wrap this up, I want to thank some very important people because anything worthwhile takes a team, and it's taken a lot of teamwork and dedication to launch this International Student Stories podcast. I want to start by thanking Shelley Struve, executive producer and my partner in this venture. Shelley is always positive and upbeat, is so creative, so fun to work with, and she just gets stuff done. Renee Stevens, CEO of Study in the USA, juggler of an astonishing number of balls to keep Study in the USA thriving, and supporter and advocate for this podcast. Sutton Long, a beautiful soul and creative force who made all the gorgeous design and branding elements. Lonnie Perrin, a talented music engineer who designed our intro and outro music and helps edit the podcasts. Thank you to Mildred Stevens, Study in the USA marketing manager, for all her marketing and social media guidance. Gracie Sylvia, our intern, who has been a great sounding board for how things will resonate with the Gen Z audience. All our other colleagues at Study in the USA who fuel us with ideas and are always helping us learn. I want to thank all the schools we work with and the wonderful, dedicated people at these schools who truly care about their international students and want them to thrive. And of course, a big thank you to our bold, courageous international students who uproot themselves from their home countries to come to study in the U.S. Thank you in advance for sharing your stories. And thank you, dear listener. You are co-collaborators on this International Student Stories podcast as well. My commitment to each one of you is that I will do everything I can to create a comfortable, safe environment for all our guests to be their best selves and share their personal stories. And I ask in return that you listen to their stories with an open heart and share their stories with your friends and family. Goodbye for now. Be well, and much love to each and every one of you.